We hope you enjoy this podcast. All our conversations are inspired by films we have selected to appear on SDG.vision. So go and take a look and be inspired by people and organisations who are making valuable contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals and making our world a better place for everybody to live. Now, sit back, enjoy, be inspired, and afterwards, go and take action.
Well, hello and welcome to SDG Vision, the podcast. The sun is shining here in the UK. Not always the case, but today it is, and it's a real shame that energy is not being converted into solar power, and yet, that's the reality that we face. But don't get too disappointed by it, because today we have an organisation that is doing incredible work to change that dynamic and make solar power available on a mass scale. So I'm really, really pleased to welcome Afsheen Rashid, CEO and co-founder of Repowering London. Hello, Afsheen.
Hello, hi Pierre.
Hi there,
glad
welcome.
To be here.
And nice to meet you as well. It's fantastic. We're really glad to have you on. The first we became aware of Repowering London was when we saw your film on YouTube. It was called Welcome to Aldgate Solar Power. And we were really blown away by it. And whilst the work that you do is covered by SDG 7, which is clean and affordable energy, just looking at that film, I know that we're going to hit so many more SDGs there, because there's so many layers to the work that Repowering London does. So perhaps as a starter, could you just give a broad overview of the work of Repowering London?
Sure, and thank you for recognizing the role that we play here. Repowering London, we work with communities. We empower people to be able to plan, fund, and build their energy projects, their energy infrastructure in their communities. So it's really giving power to people and recognizing the role that they have to play. Our vision is to create clean, local, as well as affordable energy for everyone. So that's really important. The local ownership, so that people have decision-making and control. So our projects live in energy co-ops, so that they are locally owned and controlled. A typical project could be solar panels on a roof of a community building, like a school or a leisure facility. And this creates an opportunity for local people to become a member of the co-op. They can invest in the co-op. They can own that asset. That even if they don't own their flat or their homes or that building, they can still be part of the energy transition. If they can't invest and become a member that way, they can still benefit from the surplus income that co-op is creating. And they can see the benefits of that through energy advice or any other means of support. So the money stays locally and gets distributed locally. And it's the local people who decide how that happens. So that's like the governance structure. That's the local side of things. And how we bring democratized energy to people. The clean is pretty simple, and what people understand is what people know. You can see solar panels on roofs, and that's the generation side. But also, it's about reducing the demand, because it's not all about keep producing more and generating more and using more. There's so much we can do in terms of reducing energy by improving the homes that people live in, so that we're hitting multiple benefits of tackling climate change, but also creating healthier, affordable, warm homes for people. And the other part of affordability, which is really the challenge, because the energy system as the way it is broken. But affordability, the work we're doing, is around innovating and trying to see how we can use the solar panels that are locally owned and generating clean energy, that we can supply that to residents living in a block of flats, for example. That is quite challenging, and at the moment we're only having trials because it isn't yet. Regulations is quite complex to be able to do that. So affordability is something we're working on, but again, retrofit, reducing the demand, helps improve affordability. And I think for us, we want to ensure that everyone can benefit from this transition to net zero, from the clean energy, and including people's voices who currently aren't involved and included is really important, and designing services and products with them in mind, with them in power, through a co-design process, participatory process, is really important. So really amplifying their voices to policymakers and decision makers, but repowering for us to co-design with them the energy services and products that we need for the future. So there's quite a lot that we're working on.
There's a huge amount in there. And as I said earlier on, there's different layers, and I think that it's really
Yes.
exciting to hear. I mean, the current energy system that we have, you said, is it's broken. Why is that? Why do we need to change the energy system? I mean, it may be stating the obvious to say that it's not working. Why isn't it working, and why do we need to change it?
Sure. It's broken because we still have a lot of people living in fuel poverty across the UK. 22% of Londoners are living in fuel poverty. And people associate energy with fear and anxiety. And that's our experience of engaging with residents, and particularly our focus in urban communities and communities that are marginalized and low income. That's their association with energy. We want to change and rewire this relationship. We really need to do that if we want to get to net zero, and we want to have a just transition. So we need to recognize that the system and the current way it's designed is not working for people who need it the most and need to benefit, because energy needs to be affordable by all, and people shouldn't have to make the decision to warm their homes or feed their children or provide meet their basic needs. So yeah, I think that pretty much says it all, really.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting. From just what you said, is people's relationship to energy is so interesting, because we don't think about it. We are so used to just buying our energy from some distant supplier. We don't even know where it comes from half the time. So I think that introduces a really important relational aspect to energy. And for me, that seems to be a core part of Repowering London's beliefs. Do you want to explain a little bit more about the beliefs that underpin all of your work?
Yeah, I think we've touched on some of it, like the belief that energy should be affordable by all, that people have the power, and to make the change and the decisions that they feel are best fit for them, so they design their solutions. That by coming together collectively, collective action creates more happier, healthier communities, a thriving economy. A local-led model keeps benefits and value local. Because at the moment, as you were saying, the relationship that people have is, you flick a switch, you use the electricity, you get a bill, you pay for it, you have fear in your heart. But that money that you're paying this energy supplier or wherever it's going is going out of the local economy, out of the national economy sometimes, going to the hands of few. Our solution is about bringing the collective together and bringing a more thriving economy through local benefits and keeping money local.
That, for me, hits a lot of the SDGs, and we'll come back to that. But how does it work then? Can you take us through? I think you mentioned something about cooperatives or community benefit societies, people coming together. Can you talk us through, from the beginning, how does Repowering London engage with communities and help them set up energy cooperatives or societies?
Sure, yeah, I think that'll unpack a little bit about the earlier question as well, isn't it? Like how people's relationship. So our journey starts with sometimes being introduced into a community by an existing community leader who might have seen a project that's happened in Brixton in another community and feel like, oh, I want something similar in my community, and how do I go about doing it? Or in some instances, we've been approached by a local authority who've said, oh, we've seen this happen in Brixton in another community, and how can you work with us? So the point can come from different sides. But we recognize that every community has its own social networks and have people who are already connected, be it through food, transport, or other contexts. And we identify those stakeholders, those networks, and start talking to them and engaging with them, and identify volunteers and local people who are interested in this agenda and interested in creating their own energy solutions and having an energy co-op in their borough. And through that process of engagement, we meet people who might be like-minded, we bring them together in a room, and that's when it starts flourishing, where people are like, oh yeah, I want to do this for myself and I want to do this in my local community. They start volunteering. It's often very helpful that an individual living in their community has support from an organization like Repowering who's done it before, so we can take them through a journey of what a project could look like. And the starting point of a project is very often identifying a roof, be it a school or a community building that has potential for solar panels, and getting involved in that, so engaging the building owner, or if someone's a governor, knows someone who's a governor, parent who can approach a school to identify a building that might be willing to support such a project. So they initially get involved in site identification, they get involved in setting up their own strategy, their own vision for what they want to see in their community. A volunteer can get involved in bringing more people on board. And once you get your teeth into a project, and I think that's really key, is you can lose volunteers, you can lose momentum if you don't have a project to get involved in and see something tangible happen in your community. So once we've identified a site or multiple sites, very often, we help maybe get some finance to do some technical, we get some grant funding to do some of the technical due diligence. Is this a suitable site? Can it actually host the panels? So we provide some of that technical support to the community. Once we get sign off on that, then it's into the next phase of doing some of the financial modeling and planning around that. So the volunteers can get involved in that process. And what I find really interesting is that there's a lot of valuable skills and expertise in communities. People have lots of knowledge and skills to give. And on a community energy project, it's multidisciplinary. So you don't necessarily have to be the technical person who understands how many solar panels are going to go on the roof, what the kilowatt is, what the yield is, and how the power dynamic works. No, you don't have to get involved in that. There are other parts that you can get involved in. You might have financial skills, you might have engagement skills, you might have governance skills, and help recruit people. So there's so much that everyone can give. There's a role for everyone to play, and such a learning experience for everyone, technical or non-technical. So I really love the element of the social elements of the project that come together with the technical, and there's legal and there's finance and all of that. So much to do. But you've got the support of an organization like Repowering to take you through this journey in a way that is tried and tested and successful. Ultimately, when we get the sign off on the legals and stuff, we know project's going to happen. The building owners say, yes, we want the solar panels. We love your offer. We go into fundraising mode. And that's the interesting piece, where that's when the community really gets galvanized, mobilized, because fundraising can be challenging, but also exciting. Because we've had the experience of raising £50,000 to £150,000 from a community, and that's when you really engage with a wider network of people who are maybe not necessarily able to get involved in the same way as the volunteers, but want to play their part in tackling climate change, putting their money where they really mean will provide value, but also creating more social value and community benefit. So yeah, that's a huge phase, and it's quite reassuring and empowering for volunteers to know that people are investing in such schemes when they raise the finance and when the solar panels go on the roof, and then you can see something tangible that has been created by the local community that is tackling climate change and providing social good. And then moving forward, when the project's kind of generating electricity, making money through the sale of electricity, money's coming into the co-op, you maintain the asset, and then they see, oh, we've got surplus income. We're going to distribute that. How do we distribute it? let's talk to the community back again and find out what their needs are. Where's the interest? And then you start distributing that money locally. So that community benefit, that fund that gets ring fenced in our model, is really important. And again, another way for volunteers and people, who are leading the co-ops to get involved in. And I can give a few more examples, but I'm going to take a pause there.
No, that's good. I mean, it's absolutely fascinating, and I've got a stack of questions I want to ask about some of them. I mean, one of them is, could you just give us an example of how some of the profits have been used in some of the community benefit societies that you've engaged with?
I was going to go into that, and I thought I'd give a look first. During COVID, that was a real game changer because it really showed the value of community-led projects and ownership of money, because without any bureaucracy or decision-making process, the local people could turn around and say, right, we've got £5,000 in the bank, we want to distribute this to organizations like that and that. We're providing hot meals in the community. We want to be able to use some of the money to top up people's residents' prepayment meters, and that flexibility was really great, and that happened really quickly because they were able to make those decisions for themselves, and they had their ears on the ground, and they knew who to give the money to because they knew and they saw that happening in real. So that was really powerful and impactful. And more recently, we found like our co-ops, because over the last few years with the energy price going up, that means the sale of electricity from the co-ops, they've been generating more income. And so they've been using that money to help other community groups to install solar panels on the roof, for example, support more kind of community gardening, support organizations, again, on fuel poverty, giving advice, but also paid employment. So being able to put money to support an outreach officer to go and spread the word about the co-op in their local community. And that paid employment piece is really important. And one of our co-ops hopefully will be supporting some of our training programs as well, to support young people to get trained in community energy, as well as gain some green skills. So I think it's really great. Like, they decide how things happen, but it really creates that social value and community benefit.
And the more cynical amongst us, and there's a lot of them out there, will say, well, this all sounds really lovely, fantastic, people getting on together, people agreeing. In reality, we know that, processes are complicated and people have different views. Are there times when people in cooperatives have divergent views? And in that case, what happens? Do they just have to slug it out amongst themselves and the loudest voice wins? Or what happens, Afsheen?
I think that's a really good point to raise. Yes, of course, there are divergent voices. People come from different backgrounds and contexts, and you always find the person with this loud voice who can really be dominate certain meetings. But for me, it comes back to the same thing, power to people. When you get lots of people in a room, that dynamic just works, weeds out people who are more disruptive rather than constructive. And it really helps with a consensual decision making. But the kind of tools we give our volunteers and our co-ops is what's the principles and what's the values that underpinning the group. It's about respect, equality, listening, the ability to listen and value different views. And I think that really helps. You set these values. Again, we can give some guidance, but then it's the local groups who kind of agree that up front, what their values are and how they operate, and use that, and then live by those principles. And consensual decision making happens, and sometimes you might not agree, but you can agree on a way forward. Because divergent views are helpful. Sometimes we can all get stuck in our way of thinking, and that our way is right. And it's good to kind of just be reminded again, actually, there's a different view, or there's another way of doing this. So yeah, I think the power of people is for me is beautiful to watch in action. And you find ways, you find solutions, as long as it's distributed power, and power is not held in the hand of one person.
Well, that's a very skillful process. And I guess part of Repowering London's role is to bring that learning and experience that it's taken from successful previous cooperatives that you've worked with. And do you find acting the role as mediator or sort of a critical friend throughout the process?
Yes, I think Repowering's role, and maybe I didn't quite highlight it in my earlier response. We are a development body, so we come in as the intermediary to help establish the co-op. So while we're developing projects and we're innovating, we're also supporting, mentoring, and hand-holding the energy co-ops. We're providing them, the mentoring and the guidance and the tools. So yes, we absolutely play that role with them. We also provide them services, like we help manage their assets, and they then have the power to then tell us what to do as well. And so that's an important relationship that we maintain and balance. And of course, within our team members, we make sure that our team members also have the skills to be able to facilitate and manage and support in the same way and have that experience. We're a small organization, we're growing. I think there's more capacity building internally for us to do, as well as kind of the support that we provide externally to the co-ops. But it's very much, I see us as an organization, as a family of co-ops, supporting each other and learning from each other, constantly reiterating the process. Yeah.
And how many groups are there at the moment that you've been successfully engaged with and are now independent?
We've got 10. We've got 10 local energy co-ops across London right now. We've got established co-ops in 5 London boroughs, and we've got more emerging as well. We're working with at least 7 to 8 London boroughs and having discussions. So yeah, our ambition is to have, a community energy co-op in each London borough. And there's some that already exist. There are already existing community energy organizations operating in different parts of London. So we also collaborate with the network of existing, energy co-ops.
That's terrific. I mean, that's working in partnership, isn't it, on every level, really? Can I just go back a little bit to the sort of financing aspect of it? So my understanding, may be wrong, so please correct me, is that the initial start of the process is often grant funded or trust funded, which I guess is the conversations you have with communities, etc. But the actual funding of the project comes from people having shares in the cooperative. Is that right? Can you explain that process a little bit and how people, do people have more say or votes if they put £10,000 in as opposed to someone who puts £1 in or whatever?
That's right. So yes, just to reiterate, the initial, feasibility of a site is funded through grant funds, and Repowering's work on doing some of the engagement. We can either be grant funded or get some funding from the local authority for that. But the capital to put the solar panels on the roof is raised through community shares, and that is, again, we set certain minimum threshold for people to invest, maybe £250. But for people who live locally, we'll have a lower threshold so that we can ensure that there's more local ownership, and that could be set at £50 investment for local people. In terms of the way, this is the beauty of cooperatives. So irrespective of whether you put in £10,000 or you put in £50, your say is equal. So your power, your voice doesn't depend on the value of shares that you own, but it's just by default you're a member. So your membership gives you equal voting rights, 1 vote. So that brings in the equity, which is the beauty of this local cooperative model. And as I said, it's that power to people, so more distributed power, right? Just because you've got more money and more shares doesn't mean you have a right to decide where the money gets spent and what is prioritized. So I think that's really beautiful. In terms of the financial model, once the finances are raised, people have got their shares in the cooperative. This is not a donation. These shares, this investment is an investment. So they will get a return on their investment. We target 3% return year on year. Because it's community shares, the shares aren't guaranteed. Your return, isn't guaranteed. But we do very thorough due diligence on our financial modeling, and our track record for the co-ops have been running for 10 years. We've seen year on year 3% returns provided to our investors. We also return some of the share capital back year on year as well, so they get a bit of their capital back, and then the returns are then paid on what remaining shares are held. So it allows for them to then get their money back and maybe put it in another co-op. Because ultimately, we want to be able to recycle the money and use the money to create more energy, more clean energy, more social value. What we have found, though, community shares take time to raise. Community shares, it means investing in your social networks, your engagement, building trust, spreading word of mouth, and that takes time. So we were delivering projects, and we found that sometimes it was taking a long time to raise the finance, but we had the site ready to go. So we wanted to install. And if we want to address the climate emergency at scale and pace, we need to move fast. So we have collaborated with social lenders like SMA Fairbairn and Trust for London, and we've secured a 1.5 million loan facility, which allows us to, as soon as we've got the go-ahead and the legals, to install the solar panels, and then the community can raise the finance in its time and buy the asset and bring it into community control. So we found
that is so important. Sorry to interrupt, but I think that's so important, because I think you do need that sense of progress, that sense of achievement, really, for to engage people and keep people engaged, which is the critical thing, and not just passively engaged, but actively engaged. So I think that's a really interesting development that you've got. That loan facility is fantastic, and thank goodness.
And it shows that the model is scalable.
Yes. No, absolutely, and I think this is absolutely critical, because again, these more cynical people that are out there would say, well, this is all right, you can do this at a small scale in a part of London or whatever, and they'll say, but it's not practical, you can't do this across the UK, you can't even do this across London. But I think, as you've said, yes, it is. We've got the model that can do that, and presumably once you're successful, then that fund, that loan facility that you get, well, you can get that from other sources as well at increased levels, and
absolutely
really exciting.
And in terms of speaking to the scale piece, and community shares is one area where you can raise funds, but you can raise funds through multiple means, and it can be blended together. So you could get a grant towards a capital. You can, in London particularly, there are things called carbon offset funds, which, developers who haven't met their requirements need to pay the local authority. They haven't met their energy requirements. So there's funds out there that can go towards capital. And then you can have the community shares, which can raise some more finance. So I feel like finance, the money is out there. The billions, the millions, it's out there. But it's just about us kind of packaging it together to enable scale. But what's really important for us in Repowering's model is that community power and that control. So I think governance is really important, to bring the community voice and having that community person's participation and perspective. That governance is really important, to have structures like a co-op that brings that in. Otherwise, we can decarbonize at scale, but we're not going to get the just transition. We're not going to get to net zero without bringing people with us. The Committee on Climate Change said 60% of the measures that we need to get to net zero needs behavior change. So we need people. We need people with us.
That is such a critical point. I think, the technical and the financial aspects, you're saying quite confidently, yes, we can scale that. The danger is that the community aspect gets lost. So, you have to be ever vigilant about being patient, building that, that foundation of community, and getting that sort of mission absolutely focused with the community, because without that, as you say, we lose a lot of the just sort of side of it, the social equality side of it. I think that's so important, and it's so refreshing to hear such a sound community development approach to something like energy. It's so exciting to hear that. For me, having been in community development in the past,
Right.
really, really exciting. Let's talk about some of the partners or partnerships that you engage with. You've talked about local authorities, local governments. Can you perhaps discuss a little bit as to how you engage with them, and how receptive are they? Do they have to be won over a lot of the time?
The ones that we're working with see what we're delivering and totally align with our mission and vision, and have approached us. Many local authorities have climate change teams, and they totally understand what we're doing. So to shine a light on a couple of our partners, Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea Climate Action Team, we were working with them for more than 6 to 7 years on developing the energy co-op there, which is North Kensington Community Energy. Back in 2018, there was no movement in the borough around energy. And from when we established the co-op in 2018, it's 5 years since, we now have a network of 250 investor members. We've got like 4 to 5 sites with solar panels on it. We've got a thriving volunteer group and directors really leading on it. And that was possible because the local authority worked with us to help in it create and support the establishment of North Kensington Community Energy. And they had that vision and shared mission as well, where they recognized the role that people had to play and that communities had to play very early on in their climate action plan and their strategy. And they've maintained that over the years, which has been really great, because I think if we just had the community on its own without the support of the local authority, it can be quite challenging to grow and develop. But you need that collaboration. A local authority has a really important role to play as a convener, as a facilitator, as an enabler for organizations like us and the local co-op. So that has been really a great example for us. And then we've more recently been working with Community Energy Newham. Their strategy, their climate change strategy is underpinned by a just transition. So they totally get the kind of inequality piece. They get the fact that more hearts and minds and more people need to be won on this journey, otherwise we're not going to get there. And they've been moving at scale quite quickly. And we've already installed some solar panels last year. And the community energy group, is growing, and we have got a pipeline and ambition to do a lot more. So I think, if we want to scale and grow and do more innovation in this space, then the local authority playing a role and actively saying, yes, here's our building stock. What can you do? How much can you install? And then what can we bring in? And that collaboration, that shared strategy and vision and ambition is so important, because then we can do so much together, because local authority can access a lot more funding as well, and we can access more funding. And that means you bring it together, you can do more. The 10 megawatts can become 20 megawatts really quickly with us bringing our separate strengths and power. So I really feel like those are two examples that bring it together. But at London, we've also got the Greater London Authority, and we've got the Mayor of London. And they, year on year, has been supporting community energy by giving some grant funding to help with the early stages of identifying a site, doing the feasibility. So Repowering's pipeline of over 2 megawatts of solar generation capacity, looking at maybe 30 to 50 roofs across London, has been supported by the Mayor of London, because we've been using that funding pot to build the feasibility and get the due diligence done up front.
Yeah.
So it's like, really, if we want to get to net zero and accelerate the energy transition, working in collaboration and partnership is so important. Everyone has a role to play. And I think that there needs to be this collaboration in the heart, and for everybody to reflect on each role, each stakeholder's role, and our role within this ecosystem is to constantly remind people bring people with you and give power to the people. Please distribute your power.
I like it. I
To
mean,
make
it's
it
literally
work.
it's power in two different meanings of the word, isn't it? Really. I mean, and I think
Yes,
that's that's part of the process. Is that yes, we're talking about energy, but we're also talking about people becoming far more actively involved in their community and having a stake in their community. Which is so empowering. I think for people, some people who've never had that before, that sense before.
that's true.
The roofs you talk about, the roofs you talk about in terms of the solar panels. Presumably, these are quite large roofs, like schools, colleges. They're not domestic housing. Is that right, Afsheen?
That's right. For
Yeah.
the solar panels, when we started off like 10 years ago, we had a very favorable landscape because there was government subsidy for installing solar panels. That was called the feed-in tariff, and that allowed us to install on social housing blocks. That's where Repowering's history is. Um, and we were able to do that because if the subsidy was enough, we didn't have to rely on selling the electricity to the user. But with the
Yeah.
removal of the feed-in tariff, and it was a phased approach, we then had to focus more on community buildings like leisure facilities and schools, where there was on-site demand and sufficient on-site demand for us to have like a sale of electricity, like a power purchase agreement with them. So the co-op sells electricity to the school at a discount, so they benefit from it. So that enables, that does kind of limit sometimes where we can install the solar panels because it needs to stack up financially. But yeah, we're looking at roofs that have maybe capital investment of something like £70,000. So a fairly medium scale kind of installation because smaller installations don't quite stack up. But because we're, again, have a pipeline and we have a portfolio approach, we sometimes can integrate some smaller schemes because, maybe a larger scheme might be able to absorb some of the efficiencies, and we can bring a smaller scheme on board, but we just need to take a portfolio approach before making that judgment. But we might do that if it's a strong community center and a base for people to come around. So it might make sense to do to decarbonize that building. But yeah, generally, yeah, we have to weigh the pros and cons and make it financially viable as well.
And I mean, again, it's really heartening to hear that you can sell energy back, or schools can pay a reduced price for energy which is fantastic. There's something called the local electricity bill that I read about, and I wasn't quite sure. I think it's about selling people who are involved in generating their solar electricity cannot actually directly use it. Is that right, or roughly speaking? Or could you explain perhaps what the
So,
bill is about?
Currently, someone who owns their flat, living in a street property, owning their house, can choose, if they have the investment, they can choose to install the solar panels, and they can start using that electricity as soon as they install the solar panels, so they can benefit from reduction in their energy bills eventually, payback. They'll see payback on their investment, right? But that model doesn't quite work with us installing panels on a social housing block. As I explained, when we started off, we installed solar panels on a housing estate in Brixton, a couple of them, but we couldn't sell the electricity to the residents living in the block because we're generators. You can't, as an energy co-op, you need to have a license to sell to residents. And there is regulation in place, compliance and due diligence obviously in place to be able to sell electricity to domestic property. And some of that is, required to protect residents. Some, it is quite onerous to do that. And the way the market is designed and the way the business model is designed, it requires large scale electricity generation and selling to be matched, and demand and supply to be matched and settled. So it's quite complex for a local energy co-op to take all of that on and to take on the supply license to be able to sell. So there's a lot of barriers to be able to supply electricity locally, and which means that some of the generation that's locally owned, locally generated, can't be supplied and used by the building user, by a resident living in that block of flats. And the local electricity bill is trying to address that gap and trying to enable more supply that is locally generated to local households. And there's a lot of support. I think over 300 MPs support it. And I think that's really credible work that they've been doing in terms of raising awareness in this, because it just feels like a no-brainer, especially when we're talking about more decarbonisation and decentralisation of energy. It just makes sense for that to be able to supply locally. But Repowering has been working in this space for more than 10 years. We've been trying to develop projects and we've been innovating, and we've got some trials. One of our schemes on one of our Brixton sites, we're working with an organisation called Energy Local, who've designed a solution. We're also partnering with Octopus Energy to implement that solution. So they're the supplier, and we have seen that using that model, that the residents living in those blocks who are part of the scheme have been able to save 25 to 30% on their energy bills. But it is through a supplier organization like Octopus participating that we've been able to provide this kind of benefit to them. But it is a model, and there are other models hopefully emerging as well. There are other people innovating in this space, but I think we do need some regulations to kind of change, to adapt, to allow more of this local supply model to work.
Well, I know that your focus at the moment is London, and let's face it, it's a big enough focus to be concerned about at the moment. But it sounds to me as if sort of the hard miles have been run in a way, in the sense that you must have some gaining some momentum. So do you think, do you have any plans, does Repowering have any plans to go outside of London? Or say, for example, I don't know, I've got a group of people in my community and I'm really interested in your model. Would you be open to discussing, or do you have the resources to at the moment to engage with them if they say, for example, in Southampton? Or
So Repowering's plans are very much London focused at the moment. But we are quite aware that our model, we have a lot to offer in this space. So we are focused on city context, development of community energy. But we're focused on also the breadth of solutions, because as I said, solar is the tip of the iceberg. It's a bit that you see. It's visible and tangible, and it's a great hook. But in terms of creating more kind of energy affordability and solutions that create warm, affordable homes, we're looking at retrofit and other aspects of the energy system. So we are looking at kind of really demonstrating the model of what bringing all of these aspects together in a place-based approach looks like. And we're calling this a repowered community. We want to create repowered communities. That's where clean energy development goes hand in hand with the local benefits and services. So keeping money local, creating jobs and employment, and reducing energy bills. While our plan over the next 3 to 5 years is to demonstrate and build these repowered communities in at least 3 London boroughs. While doing that, we want to create the tools and templates and guidance that will enable any community energy group to build the same. So we definitely think there is a role for repowering outside of London, particularly for other cities and towns to be powered by clean energy. And we hope that through this process that we will build the right tools and also more capacity and resilience within the organisation to be able to do that beyond London. I think it would be a bit premature if we started doing our work outside. Otherwise, we'll be stretching ourselves. Having said that, community energy is an industry, and there are organizations outside of London operating who some are like Repowering, operating as businesses, offering services. Some are more smaller, volunteer-based organizations. So, if there's some kind of introductions we can make, then that's fine. But the sector is growing, and I think it's really exciting, and there is an opportunity for Repowering. We are getting there, but we're not there yet to kind of operate fully outside of London.
I know. I think that's important. I think that obviously you need to understand what your resources and not being too stretched, and then skimping on, for example, the community development aspect of it, because you have to respond to this request, etc. So I get that, and I think that's as it should be. And I like the fact that you intimated that you're a kind of a resource hub as well, that people can turn to, organisations and people can turn to benefit from your knowledge and and from your learning, which is terrific.
Yeah.
Now, I said to you at the beginning that we were going to have a look at the Sustainable Development Goals and where Repowering London fits in those. And this conversation has been absolutely fantastic, because I think that it proves very powerfully how the big issues of our time are not isolated in silos. They're integrated and linked with other issues, and I think your work really does demonstrate that very effectively. So, just looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, I'll go through them, and you say, "Look, hang on, no, I don't think we hit that one," or "Actually, I do think we do." So, number 1, SDG 1 is no poverty. I think it's a no-brainer from what you've said. That it does, your work does really benefit people who are living in poverty, energy poverty particularly.
Yeah.
SDG 2, zero hunger. Well, you can argue that they're linked also. That if you're not spending so much on energy, then you can afford to buy nutritious food, etc. Good health and well-being, SDG 3. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. The impact of people coming together and collaborating really creates these thriving communities, but people who are happier, feeling more connected in their local area, because it can be quite isolating. But then our work on energy advice and the work that we're developing on retrofit is about, addressing damp, mold, warmer, comfortable homes to live in. So I definitely agree. And air quality as well. We've been doing some work bringing together the indoor air quality monitoring with energy monitoring. And there's some really interesting overlaps there. And interesting from a behavior change point of view, but also the impact on people.
And what about SDG 4, quality education? What do you think?
What I haven't been able to do is talk about our training and education program that we run for young people. And I feel like, our role is about attracting and building the diverse talent pool required for the green jobs, the future green jobs in the green industry, because it currently lacks the diversity which it will need to innovate and create and provide more sustainable solutions. And we support young people from particularly disadvantaged communities who wouldn't have otherwise benefited from paid training opportunities to know that there is a pathway for them. We're working in that space. Plus, we collaborate with schools and run workshops, raise awareness within school around climate change and energy, because at the moment the curriculum doesn't really cover the depth of climate change or even include it at the different levels. So we do some workshops around that as well through drama, theatre and play, which is really interesting.
That's great. Number 5, SDG 5, gender equality. What about that, do you think?
I would like to think that we are doing have a role to play there, because community energy has a lot of women activists and a lot of women who are taking on leadership roles within our, at least within our co-ops. Within Repowering, we are largely dominated by women as well as an organization. And I
Yeah.
think there is something to be said there. And, obviously, we're in a very small organization, but there's something evolving here and creating, as an organization, creating a caring, nourishing environment that allows carers, women particularly, who have been taking time out of work, coming back into work, finding their feet
Yeah.
and finding a role to play. And we as an organization are really taking that seriously in being able to give them the flexibility to have that balance. Yeah.
That's terrific. And no, SDG 6 is clean water and sanitation, so maybe not this one.
No, I don't
Can
think
you
so. Not
surprise me? No.
unless we
Okay.
start.
SDG 7, well, it's the obvious one, affordable and clean energy. Yes, tick that with a big tick. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth. I remember you talking about apprenticeships and young people learning sustainable
Yeah.
energy skills.
And if we get the business model, demonstrate the business model for repowered communities, what we're looking at is establishing commercially viable, resilient businesses moving
Yeah.
forward, again, with the
Yeah.
same kind of principles around the cooperative principles. So hopefully we will get there. I wouldn't say that we're there yet.
No. Number 9, SDG 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. Again, I think there's a tick there.
We're there, yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Number 10, reduce.
Innovation, social innovation, technical,
Yeah,
creating infrastructure.
absolutely. Reduced inequalities is number 10, and I think you've hit upon that in some of the previous ones, bringing people together, giving opportunities, etc. SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities. I mean, need I say more? You've covered that at length in this discussion. SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. Again, big tick, I think, with that. 13, climate action. Yes. 14, maybe you won't hit, life below water. Possibly not. 15, life on land. Yes, I think you can say you're obviously contributing to life on land. 16 is interesting. Peace, justice, and strong institutions.
Ooh. I mean, for me personally, motivation has always been around, social and environmental justice that goes hand in hand, which is quite a driver for me as an organizer. It's why I do what I do. Yeah, I think there's some justice element to what brings people to work at Repowering, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, maybe it's a more like a softer one that we're kind of operating in.
Well, we could also mention energy justice, really. I mean, it's
Yes,
affordable energy for all is a form of
yes,
justice, really, I think.
yes.
And lastly, and I think this has gone right through all of them as it should do, which is SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals. And I think you've mentioned at every stage it's about partnership, which I think makes you so successful, really, and your approach so successful.
There's
So,
quite a lot of tick boxes.
I reckon you've ticked virtually all of them apart from 2,
Yeah, I think apart from two, but
which
yeah.
which is not bad going, not bad going at all. Afsheen, it's been fascinating, and I could carry on for hours, but I know that you're very busy, and your time is probably better spent delivering what your mission is there to deliver. But it's been a pleasure. I don't know whether there's anything else you want to mention that we haven't covered so far.
I think we've covered everything, but this year I want to say thank you for giving the opportunity to share our work and giving us this platform to really unpack, what we are delivering under the SDG goals. And yeah, hope that people hear this and feel like they can collaborate with us as well.
Absolutely. What I would do for people who haven't seen it is really encourage people to look at your film, Welcome to Aldgate Solar Power. It's under SDG 7 on SDG Vision. And I think that what I really loved about that was that sense of community and engagement that runs through that film. It really powers that film along. So please watch it. It's fantastic and inspirational. And if people want to get involved, if they have any questions, what's your contact details, Afsheen? Who should they contact within Repowering?
Info@repowering.org.uk.
Smashing. Well, that's terrific. I'm sure you'll get a lot of inquiries and all the power to you. That's all I can say, because I think you're making an incredible contribution to making our lives more sustainable. And hopefully at some point we'll come back and you've not only spread across London, but you're in Manchester, Liverpool, and who knows, across Europe as well. That would be fantastic. So Afsheen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Goodbye. Bye-bye now.
Now, if you enjoyed that, go and have a look at their film and many, many others on sdg.vision.